Hello and welcome to the devotion for Monday, July the 4th, Independence Day. And we're looking at erasing the lines. And I gave you 3 tips on Sunday morning. The first one was identify the issue, because so many times what we talk about or what we feel like needs to be addressed tends to be the fuel that set the thing ablaze, or the straw that broke the camel's back, or whatever we call it. But really, that surface thing isn't what's really at stake. And we talked about the fact that there's usually things deeper. Then we talked about choosing the right time and place to be able to have a healthy conversation where we can really focus, pay attention, and do the things we need to do. And then we begin with a positive stroke. And we said that that isn't just to butter someone up. That is forcing ourselves to look at the other person's vantage point, and then starting from there so they can see that we are at least attempting. I don't think we ever have complete objectivity, but attempting to look at things from their vantage point as well as ours, to lay our agenda down, as we talked about Sunday morning, to be able to erase a line. Now we're going to look at 4 and 5. And the next one is fix something. And this is really important. Fix something. You know, it's interesting, whenever we get ready to talk about any specific issue, sticking to that issue is really, really difficult. It's almost like, you know, we sit down to talk, and in the middle you go, well, you know, the thing that I want us to clear up is this, because this has happened 3 or 4 times. And the person goes, well, you know, the reason that happened is because X, Y, and Z. And I go, oh, whoa, wait a minute. X, Y, and Z were the result of decisions made by your team. Wait, no, not my team. Now, we made the decision about X, Y, and Z because there were the shift in job responsibility, and all of a sudden you've got just all of this complexity around. And what it takes is some discipline to be able to go, okay, there are a lot of extenuating circumstances, there are a lot of things going on, but we sat down to get a better plan for this. Stick to that point. Settle something every time you sit down. You know, it's interesting if we take it out of a business world and take it into individual couples. I know couples who every time they sit down to discuss anything, they end up with this daisy chain of all of these subjects and all of these issues. And the way that the conversation always ends is with people being frustrated and just going, what does it matter? It doesn't matter, right? And they've never fixed one thing. I want to impress upon you the power of just fixing one thing. When Paul and I sit down frequently, the goal is we may not find out what we're going to do for the rest of our lives, but we are going to figure out what we're going to change, at least for the next week, and we're going to try it out and see if it's a better plan. If it's not, then we'll rework it. But we are not getting up until we find a better plan for this particular item. We're going to fix, or at least attempt to fix, something. So again, you can't let the complexity and all the stuff pull up. We've got to fix something, at least a better plan that we will enact to do one thing healthier. And if it doesn't work, we can adjust it, but we will fix one thing. And the only way to do that is as the other stuff comes up, because, okay, let's take a list, let's table it, let's set it aside, but we came here to fix this. What are we going to do to be healthier in this? What are we going to do? And it is amazing how many times I've seen people, once they just start to get a better plan for one thing, when they've never been able to agree or fix anything, everything's always ended up in a flood of it, just, you know, throw up my hands. When they just fix one thing, they began to have hope that maybe we can tackle the other things. So, number 4, fix something. And when the complexity of all this stuff comes in, figure out the most important thing. You know, we may have to shift one occasionally, but we want to fix something. Number 5 is don't bring up the past. Do you remember where I talked Sunday morning about the fact that we have to start every day fresh, every day new? We got to deal with this. You know, it's amazing. And I'm going to go to interpersonal relationships here. Every once in a while, I'll have a husband and wife come into my office for counseling. And they'll come in and, you know, he's kind of shut down and got his arms folded, and he walks in and sits down, and she's got a notepad, and on her notepad she goes, you know, I just brought some notes because I didn't want to take up a lot of your time, but I just wanted to be clear. And you know, and so they sit down, and he's kind of like, oh God, here we go. And then all of a sudden she starts, well, it all started on our honeymoon. And she starts into this horrible story about what happened on their honeymoon 20 years ago, and how he broke her heart, you know, and goes through this. And in the middle of this thing, he goes, you forgot the part about the restaurant. And she goes, that's right. And then she starts taking margin notes in there about the restaurant. And now, why did he bring up the restaurant? You know why? Because he's heard this story 100 times, over and over and over again, and he is shut down. He goes, it doesn't matter what I do. If I can't get past what happened 20 years ago, and please understand, there were another 14, 15 major events over the last 15 years that are constantly brought back up. And what happens? We quit. If I can't get past what happened way back there, why even try? The same thing. If every time that we sit down to try to talk about a problem at work, or every time we try to deal with a relationship, we start bringing up stuff that happened way, way, way back here, that it is just completely dysfunctional. And why do we do that? I've got a couple of things. See, I feel like that most of the time, to justify our own actions and to deal with other situations and quote unquote get what I want, we either argue like cave people or we argue like lawyers. Now, cave people is pretty simple. It's just you whack each other with clubs, right? It's like you did this, and 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 you did this. And finally somebody picks up the great big old club and just whack, you did this. And then if it's the woman, she normally breaks down. I don't even know why I talk to you. I just don't want to talk to you anymore. Right? And if it's the guy, he's like, kick me, I'm a dog. I'm never going to be the husband that you want. I'm never going to be the man that you want in your life, right? You know, it's where we just beat each other up for a while, and then usually we come back and apologize for the big club. But do we ever fix anything? No. And the next time we have an argument, or the next time we try to deal with a crisis, or the next time we try to deal with Uncle Henry, or the next time we come back to that corporate business meeting, what happens? We talk about the exact same stuff all over again. Why? Because we didn't fix something. And we continue to bring up the past, which just muddies the water and doesn't bring any health whatsoever. And the second way that we argue, I said, was like lawyers. Now, lawyers want to build a brick bunker of a case that will stand up. And what we do when we begin to argue as lawyers is we tend to have that rehearsal, and we pull together all the stuff that's going to support our case, and then we throw out everything that doesn't. You ever had that where you're kind of running over that conversation that you're going to have with your boss, or you're running over that conversation that you're going to have with a coworker, or cousin Henry, or whatever it is, and in the middle of that conversation, you know, I'll say this and he'll say this, and I'll say this and he'll say this, and I'll say this and he'll say this, and I'll say, whoa, wait a minute, if I say that, that brings up this situation, which makes me really look bad. Note to self, don't bring up this. Why? Because I don't want anything that's going to weaken my case. But here's the thing. When we argue like a lawyer, we argue for me to win and the other person to lose, right? And nothing ever gets healthy that way. Why bringing up the past is so dysfunctional is if I can't, using the lawyer terminology, if there is not enough evidence in a reasonable span of time to have this discussion, then one of two things is true. I'm overreacting, and I've got to reach way back here to find enough evidence to make this person look guilty, quote unquote, or we don't have the right issue. There's something deeper that really is triggering this, and we're dealing with some surface thing, and I've got to go way, way, way back here to prove what a jerk you are and why you're wrong and I'm right. Never brings health. We need to stick to a reasonable span of time. If we're talking about deadlines aren't being met, we need to be able to look at the last 6 to 9 months, not the last 15 years. If we're talking about longer things, say for instance, my wife doesn't want to go to the family barbecue on the 4th of July because the last 3 years Uncle Henry got hammered and groped her, then a reasonable span of time may be 3 years because it only happens once a year. But we got to have a reasonable span of time, a place where we go, this makes sense. Because anytime we reach way back there, it's either because we're trying to frame someone, there's not enough evidence in the here and now that really shows that this is a problem, or we've got this dysfunction back here that we just can't let go of. Now, is there a time, if I've got this horrible wound that happened on our anniversary that we need to deal with? Yeah, okay, get a counselor and talk about that. But we don't bring it up when we're trying to fix the issues of today. It's too far back there. So, issue 4 and issue 5, fix something. Every time we sit down, we don't get up until we get a better plan about one thing, and we have to stick to the issue. We got to push all the other stuff aside, or take a note or whatever, and go, we'll get to that later. But this is what we need to deal with right now. Let's find a better plan. And then the next one, don't bring up the distant past to deal with something in the future. It needs to be a reasonable span of time. Every time that we start bringing stuff up way from the past, people shut down. If I can't be forgiven for what happened 15 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 3 years ago, then why even try? So here we are, 4 and 5. Stick to the issue, settle, fix something, and number 5, don't bring up the past. And tomorrow, we look at 6 and 7. See you then.